Hello.
Oh yes, Scott. So this is the second time round, by the way.
What's your name?
Darby. Actually, it's Mark Darby, but I go by Darby.
Hello, Darby. And where did you grow up, and where do you live now?
It's a good question because I've lived in a few places. But originally I was born in England. At a very young age I was transported to Australia, where I grew up in a rocket range kind of place where they let the rockets go off. So it was a military establishment, even though I wasn't living on their military base, but Woomera, Australia, which was out back. Then I moved to Adelaide when I was 9 years old and lived there until I was about 20. And then I had the itch to move, so I went to Sydney, lived there for a few years, New Zealand, and came back to Australia, went up to Darwin because by this time I had the itch to travel, so I travelled through Asia, and in that travels I met my wife Joanne. We met in India, and then I moved to Canada, Montreal, Canada, and that's really where I'm based. My house is there. I never live in my house, very rarely. My son's living there, so I have a country house, and so I stay there. And also in Costa Rica, and I'm still travelling, so I kind of find it difficult to stay in one place for too long. I like to move around. So
it sounds like it.
Yeah, so planet Earth.
Planet Earth is where your home is. And what has been the main spiritual or contemplative practice of your life?
The main spiritual? Well, of course, yoga. That's what I'm doing. I'm into yoga. So, but the journey began a long time before that. So,
what was the journey that began a long time before that?
I think it was in my past lives. If you want to say that, it's it's something that you're born with, I believe. And I remember I was in Woomera and going to a Catholic school, and I was very, very much into this spiritual things. I remember hearing about the saints, and I go to confession every day. So we had this travelling priest come in, so I went to confession every day. And finally the nuns came and told me, you don't have to go every day, which was kind of upsetting because it's supposed to be a secret between me and the priest. I'm like an 8-year-old boy or something, 7-year-old boy. And but there, so it was already there. I remember when I moved to Adelaide, I became an altar boy, and so I was very devoted to spiritual life until a teenager.
What do you think it was? When you say you feel like you came in with this?
It's just something that you feel. You have this love or this belief, and you surrender. I think it's more surrender. You surrender to understanding that there's a God, or whatever you believe it is. My idea of God has changed considerably over the years. But you have that feeling or belief that that's fair, and you just devote yourself, which is bhakti. So I feel that was ingrained in me until I said I was a teenager, and that was.
So you feel like you were born with bhakti?
I believe so. Well, and I think most people are. Most people who are in the yoga world have done yoga in their past lives, and we're just continuing our journey. And it's written in the Gita that this is what happens. You start a journey, in the next life you come back and continue your journey, and you already have past karmas or samskaras that will help you on the way.
So when you were a child and you loved it, did you think that the church was something that you'd?
Oh, I wanted to be a priest.
Right.
So I'm going to be a priest. But 13-year-old, 14-year-old, the church tells you things, and sometimes there's things that are just blatantly wrong, that don't make sense, and then you have the question, and once the question's there, then you stop believing, or you can if you don't get right answers. And it was a very simple question that came to me, was that being Catholic, Catholics are the only people who can go to heaven. So it's like, okay, I'm a Catholic, I can go to heaven, but what about this poor person who's in the middle of a jungle, somewhere in the middle of Africa or South America, that's never seen a white person, never heard of Jesus Christ or Christianity? Is God going to neglect him and send him to hell? And that didn't make sense. So that kind of was the beginning of the end for the Catholic religion.
So what compelled you to continue after that?
Coming to India. That's what it was. Once I got to India and saw India, it was just a flame lit up.
And did you go to India because you knew it was spiritual?
No, I was travelling to England.
Right.
I never made it to England, by the way, but I was travelling to England. It was the Australian thing to do. Go from Australia, go back to the homeland. And I was going overland through Asia, and it was a pretty nice, very interesting journey. It took me 3 years before I came back to Australia. But part of it took me into India, and there it was. Everybody, the temples, the bells ringing, the shops with the Ganeshas or the Lakshmis, and everything with flowers and incense around. So there was that devotion was there, and you could feel it, and it just triggered that emotion again. So, I left India and then decided when I went back to Australia, I'm going to go back to India. I'm going to do yoga. It's spiritual.
So where did yoga come in? When you decided to do yoga, where would you or found out about it before?
Well, I didn't know anything about it. I had no idea what it was. I just knew it was in India. Spirit, it was there. Yoga's there. Meditation. I had no idea it was anything to do with yoga asana. Somebody gave me light on yoga, so I had Iyengar's book and I was copying postures. And but apart from that, I didn't really know. I was open to anything that came along. So, but it took a while. I arrived in India in April, May.
What year was that?
1974. No, that was the first time, 1979. So it was the beginning of 79 when I came back. And, I was still a traveller. I'd still heard from travellers about Goa, the parties in Goa. And so that was kind of like, well, I've got to do that. That's something I have to do. I have to go to these parties and experience the full moon parties and all what happens in Goa over Christmas. And so I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to say and leave that out and just do yoga. So I said, okay, I'll wait. And so I went to Sri Lanka and surfed for 5 months. Beautiful experience surfing, beautiful, which I still do. Then I came back to India and started heading up to Goa and passed through Mysore. And in Mysore I left my bag, my passport, most of my money. I didn't want to take it to Goa. And so I just went with a little backpack, a little shoulder bag with a few pots and pans and a longies and very, very, very basic stuff and a bedroll. So that was it. And came to Goa and lived on Arambul Beach. So I was living on the beach and did the full moon parties. And during this time I heard about Gokarna, which is a little to the south of Goa. And a very, very spiritual Shiva town. It's a very important place to visit if you have anything to do with Shiva, which was coming into me. The Shiva was there because it was all the party people, all the hippies were into this, smoking chillums, boom Shiva, boom Hari Bol. So that was there, and again, igniting the flame. Igniting this feeling inside of me. And so I decided to go to Gokarna. And I would just go back a little bit and say something that happened in Sri Lanka, which is very much to do with why I took my path to get to Gokarna. In Sri Lanka there was a festival, and I don't even know who it was for, but we were surfing. We decided to go, a bunch of us decided to go, but the bus only went a certain way. And so the last part of the journey to get to this festival was walking for many hours. But along the way there was families and all these pilgrims all walking, and they'd walked much further than us. And so it kind of had this feeling of being a tapas to get to this festival. Sort of something you were saying, something you had to work to do to get respect from the gods. So that's what it felt. These people were doing it not because they didn't have money. It was a pilgrimage. And so I went through that. And so when I was in Goa and deciding to go to Gokarna, I decided I was going to walk. So I set up with my bag, and I would just, in the mornings I'd get up, walk, come to the first village or town, have breakfast, continue to walk till lunchtime, then eat a little bit more, buy food, buy some rice, some vegetables, and then walk and take a rest in the afternoon. And then later afternoon I'd start walking again, and wherever I was at sunset I would stop and cook, spend the night. Same thing the next day. Unless I liked the place, I'd spend a bit more time. So that's how I got to end up in Gokarna. And there I was in Gokarna. It was a holy town, and it was a few weeks, I'm not sure how long it was before Shivaratri, but I was there. And then Shivaratri came, and that is the day that you could actually go into the temple and to be in the sanctuary and touch the lingam. Everybody was allowed to do that. So that was a big thing, and I just, in this crowd of people, I think I took something before I went in, so it was really kind of spaced. And I just went in. I remember lifting my feet off the ground, and the crowd was just taking me. There was so many people, and then in we went. And I remember I just laid on the ground. I've got my hand in the hole where the lingam is. I'm touching it, and I look up, and the priest is looking for me. And at this time, everybody that went in with me had left. I'm there by myself
with the hand in there.
Hand in there. So it was kind of.
What was it you were experiencing? Do you think?
I think surrender. You know, that part of belief and surrender that you know. There's a greater being out there, and maybe a question of show me the way or something like that. You know, I'm searching. Here I am. Look, I'm here. I'm surrendering to you. I'm searching. Can you help me out?
Because it had been like, it's amazing. It had been such a pilgrimage for you, right? It was your own little one, and that you were at the end, and you were there, and it was. You know, you'd walk to get there.
Yeah, I'd walk to get there, and then. The other thing is I didn't have any money by now. I'm down to 3 rupees. So I still have to get to Mysore. But just as I'm coming up the temple and I'm walking down the street, this person I'd met in Goa came running up to me and said, Darby. And, oh, okay, cool. And he was going to Mysore, so suddenly I had means to go there. So it was kind of like a blessing from Shiva. Okay, I'm going to look after you. And then I took him into the temple, and so I went and touched it again. So it was pretty good.
And so you headed to Mysore.
Headed to Mysore.
What happened next?
Well, in Mysore I met, I went to the hotel. I left my luggage and my money. A very cheap old hotel near the market of Mysore. And I met this unusual person, I would say. Old Cliff, people who have met him will say he's unusual.
Cliff Barber?
Cliff Barber, yeah, quite a character.
If you don't mind me asking, what was he like then?
What was he like?
You hear so people like me. You hear so much about Cliff, who passed away the last couple of years. But what was he like when you met him?
Well, for me, he was just when I first met him, he was just another traveller. You know, different. I've met lots of hippies. He looked like a hippie, long hair. He didn't wear shoes. Didn't wear very basic longies, which is what I was wearing. That's all I did. I wasn't wearing shoes. I was a hippie. My hair was long, so we kind of just met. So I didn't really think of anything of him being spiritual at that stage. He did become my mentor for a long time after that, because, you know, I met him and I started talking to him about yoga, and so he said, "Come and meet my teacher." So I said, "Okay," because, you know, I'm coming into Mysore and now Goa's over, the parties are over. Now where is it? Where's my teachers? I'm ready now to commit. You know, I'm ready to do it. So, and he appeared and took me to Pattabhi Jois. I met him and he said, "Watch the class." I watched the class. Okay, these people are jumping around and going into these postures. I can sit in Padmasana, I can do a couple of those things. So I didn't really think much about it. Then we had a discussion about the price, me and Pattabhi Jois, and it was a lot. It was $100, which was a lot of money for me. I'd lived in Goa for that amount of money for a few months. And so I said no, and I said, what about 75? Because I'm very much into bargaining. And he said no. And so I said, okay, thank you, Baba, that's it. And I left. But I came back the next day. You know, I probably just said to myself, you know, you've been asking to get on this journey, and it's there. You've been led this way. So you'd be crazy not to do it. Stop looking around anywhere else. Go on. This is where you were taken. So I decided to go back, and then Pattabhi Jois said, "Oh, you can do for 75," and so that's how I started. And it turned out to be Ashtanga yoga, which, you know, like I said, I didn't know what yoga was, so I just went along with it. And, you know, 10 days later, I'm black and blue in pain, and I'm in pain for the next 3 months. So,
what was the Shala like in 1979, 1980?
it was like a jail, one way of putting it. It was a small room, big enough for 8 people. Was crowded. So I thought it was crowded. You're almost touching the other person. Very rarely it was 8 people in those days. But it had bars on it. It was a very small door. And and we called it a jail because there's a lot of pain going on in there.
What does that mean?
Pain? It means Guruji would push you and you're grunting and groaning and, you know, that kind of the pushing Guruji would do, or just us struggling to do postures. So,
but it felt okay to you?
I just went with it. I remember, you know, Joanne arrived 1 week later after I did. So, and then we became friends. We were, you know, it was old Cliff, myself and a French guy, and then Joanne would come and we would cook on the roof of this hotel. And so we became friends. And so I asked her one time, "Oh, give me a massage." And she came and went, and I almost jumped. I was so sore in the back of her legs. But it changed. It would shift. You know, it would be different. It would be moving. And so you'd be healing. You'd have pain, but you would heal. Then the pain would go somewhere else. And here's my mentor, Cliff Barber. Oh, it's normal. This is normal. Yeah, right.
How long did you stay there for?
I did the primary series, which was free. It was a 3-month course. And then I went away for a month. And then I came back and planned to stay another 3 months, but I actually stayed 5. Joanna hadn't left, so she was still there. And so Pattabhi Jois very quickly had me catch up to whatever postures Joanne was doing, and we both finished intermediate at the same time. So it was a 3-month program again. And then we started to learn advanced. But what had happened was that I had injured my knee, you know, doing some stupid thing. Well, it wasn't Pattabhi Jois, it was my own ego, looking at advanced student, old Cliff, doing Virinchiyasana. And I decided to try and putting my foot over, and so I did it. I just pushed a little bit each day, and I managed to do it. But that's overstretching took its toll, and eventually my knee popped out. So, and then, which was interesting, then Guruji heard it, and they said, and I heard it. He went pop, and I didn't stop. You know, okay, the next day I came back again, pop, in Virinchiyasana D. Third day he said, you don't do. And then he wouldn't let me do any knee bending postures at all, and except for Baddha Konasana. And then he'd put me into Baddha Konasana, push one leg down, push the other leg down, my knee would go snap, and my spine would go and that went on. And after 3 months, when I was ready to leave, he said, can you stay one more month, because he wanted to heal my leg, heal my knee. And so I stayed another month. It wasn't healed. He said, stay 1 more month. And, you know, it was getting better. And in that month, it healed. You know, I sat in a Padmasana, and sitting in Padmasana, he was looking at me and he goes, thank you, Darby. Gave me a little bow. So he was happy that but I could actually get back to Padmasana.
And that you'd stayed, I suppose.
And I stayed. I mean, then I took another month off. Joanne stayed, but I took another month and then came back again. So in total that time it was 2 years. And many things happened. Joanne ended up by, we ended up by getting married, had a child. Interesting story again. Yes, should I tell it?
That's really lovely. So you met and married Joanne in the space of the time in Mysore.
Yeah, in the first 2 years. And then we ran out of money, or I did, when Joanne didn't. I didn't want to take her money, so I went back to Australia, brought Joanne with me, and we stayed for a year and then came back. So the whole purpose of our trip in Australia was to get money to come back to India, and we came back and stayed another 2 years. And then money ran out, another child came, and we ended up going, that's when we went to Canada.
And what happened then?
Oh, family life, the best way to describe it. We went shopping with Joanne's sister the next day to buy food, and when it came to pay the bill, I looked at Joanne's sister and she gave me money to buy the food. The next day I had a job working for her husband, who was the president of a company, a dressmaking company. And so then I ended up by, starting at the bottom but working there, and just got involved in that. And so that took more time. And so the yoga went slowly down. Started to play golf, snowboarding or skiing and snowboarding, just normal things.
So you and Joanne then turned into the lives of householders?
More me. Joanne was still practicing. She would still practice a bit, not as much. But we were really a house. We had another child, so it's 3 children. We bought a house, so we had to pay those things off. So
how long did that last for?
About 12 years, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a long time. And then circumstances prevailed that I got fired and started the yoga practice the next day, which I was already missing. I'd already been given the seed to get back into yoga.
It's almost like, if you don't mind me, like saying, like you were born. You said earlier about how you were born with bhakti, and then like you had your bhakti, it was all up into your life, and then you met Joanne, and then you moved to Montreal, and then you went into this life of householder. Did that essence of bhakti leave you in that time, or was there always something like calling you?
I believe there was something always calling me, but I just ignored it because you have to make a living. So, and that took over. This new life, this new adventure. And it wasn't that I was just working. I was working, but I was given more promotions. I was given more responsibility in the company. So I was getting higher up in the company. So that was taking me away from it. I'll go back to what actually happened was that I was at work, and an old acquaintance of mine, Shandor Rameti, who actually let me take charge of his yoga school for 1 month while he went to India, which was one of the reasons I didn't want to teach yoga, is because I had 30 students, and after 1 month I was 4 left. So it was
what happened?
I was teaching like Pattabhi Jois, push and trying to, we were being pushed, but we didn't do anything else in life. So we had a whole day to recover. But if somebody's working and they get pushed, they get into pain and they don't really know what's happening. I had old Cliff telling me, okay, you're in pain, that's normal. You're going to get on with this, it's going to go, it's going to change, which it did. So he told me it was changing, and still in pain, but different pain. I wasn't doing that to the students. We just come in and, exhale, reach your under D. I don't want to do it, just exhale. And I never saw that lady again. But that was what it was. So when I went to Canada, I wasn't going to teach yoga. It was like, it wasn't popular, would have been very difficult. I didn't have a place to teach, and when I tried to get in touch with the yoga scene in Montreal, it was a negative answer. So I just said, forget it, and just continued to work. But then Shandor Rameti called me one time at work, and I don't know how he got my number, but he managed to get hold of me, and we talked a little bit. And at the end of the conversation, he says, how's your yoga practice? And I said, well, I'm not practicing. And he said, what a shame, you had such a beautiful practice. And so again, the water was put on the seed, and it just went, it needed to grow. And
how did it feel getting back into it after all those years?
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, it was really, like I said, the next day after I got fired, we just said, okay, let's do it. We just started. So we started primary, and then we started adding more and more. And then I decided, well, not decided, it was time to go and teach. So, and I found it was summertime, so the studios were empty, there was nobody teaching. So the owner of the studio said, come, you can use the space. And so I started the Mysore program. And it just grew from there. And, it grew because now yoga was becoming popular. Ashtanga was very popular. I was the man because I'd been to I had the experience. I was the only person in Montreal who had been to Mysore and knew Pattabhi Jois.
Even though it was 15 years before.
Even though it was 15 years, but still the experience was there, and I'm doing advanced postures. So things that these people weren't doing. So people heard about it, they came and just started teaching.
Right. Well, so what was your journey from teaching from there, from like knowing that like at some point you'd been like hurting people and then you decided to teach? What was
I tried to back off. Tried to be more gentle, which was, there was no experience. I had no idea about anatomy. I just knew that I did this and it worked and the pain. But I tried to, I was lessening it as best I could. And then I was trying to find ways to learn how to teach. I took workshops with Richard Freeman, David Swenson, Tim Miller. So I was doing workshops. So I would go and take workshops, and Richard Freeman was a kind of an eye-opener because he was talking about alignment. And what's this? We don't talk about an alignment in Ashtanga. That's Iyengar. We don't talk about that. And so he was bringing that concept into it, which was very beneficial to me because I was just, even myself, I was breaking my body because I didn't have any knowledge. I was just push, take the posture. And so that helped me.
So you were just kind of doing it, but these refined movements, these refined ways of moving, they were kind of a bit groundbreaking for you.
Yeah, it was something new to look into, something to experiment with. I started also working with an Iyengar teacher, Heart Laser, and we started doing workshops together, Darby with Heart. So it was the workshops.
That's so nice.
And so he was trying to learn Ashtanga. We actually met at a David Swenson teacher training, 40-hour teacher training. And he was trying to come in to learn the Ashtanga world. And so it was really beneficial. I started to learn about the Iyengar and alignment, and at least the knowledge came in. Now I don't really believe in that much. I don't believe in the Iyengar system. But it was a good part of the journey into teaching. And at least I started to learn how to touch people and learn about adjustments, learn how to look. I remember when I first looked at looking as a teacher, and looking at a student and go, something's wrong. But I had no idea what it was. So that was the beginning. Now I can look at somebody and say, they need to do this or they need to do that. So that's how the journey is evolving.
If we were to go back and look at those 5 years you spent in Mysore with Joanne and those small amount of people and your formative years, what would you say that you got from that time of being really immersed in the practice and in the spirituality of India?
What did I get out of that? Well, I learned to do yoga asanas, but I don't think that's the main thing. We were still searching. We were still going, looking at reading books, as many books as we could, Mahabharata, Ramayana, whatever was there. Maybe not so much the Yoga Sutras, they were a little bit above our heads at that stage. But we were still reading and searching, looking, talking to the other people that came. Also still seeing what's happening in India, so we were part of that.
I think it's just because this part of you that you mentioned is deeply devotional, it seems. And I'm wondering about that side of you, like through your life.
Oh, I think it's still there. It's wanes. Sometimes it's very strong. Sometimes, it got weak for a while. When I was working, I was weak, but it's still there. I'd still go to, I wouldn't go to church, but I'd go to church at Christmas or something like that, and it was still like, okay, this is a house of God, and so I'd still give respect no matter what it was. Even in Russia, we saw these Greek priests or the Greek orchid or whatever it is in Russia, and they came along and did the same, went up to the kiss their hand and whatever. So it's just a form of respect that you give, a form of acknowledgement to the universe that you believe. So
As you kind of a little bit older now, what's your perspective on all of that with where you are now?
It's when I was young, it was like blind. Blind devotion. Come to the temple, like Shiva temple, in there, blind devotion, put my hand in it, yes. Now I'd probably go over a bit more knowledge is fair, not be so much like that, but the feeling is still there. We just went, as you know, we went to Gokarna yesterday and we came back today. It's the town is pretty much the same. The tourist attractions have changed a lot, but the temple is still the same. And even though Westerners are now, or foreigners, they say, are not allowed to go inside the temple. And we went there today, we went into this beautiful, small, very small Ganesh temple. And we're not allowed in the sanctuary, but we walked around it, which is still pretty small. And it was so powerful today, the feeling of this feeling, and my heart just swelled up. So I know it's still there. This bhakti, and Joanne was the same. We both felt the same thing.
Was this the same temple that you put your hand in the lingam?
No, this is the Ganesh temple.
Oh,
You go there before you go into the Shiva temple, and you ask Ganesh's permission to go in to see Shiva. He's the guard. He's the guard of the door. So you always pay respects to Ganesh. And then you go to see Shiva. So that was the first thing we did. And then we went to the Shiva temple, and we're nowhere near the inner sanctuary at all. We were a long way away. It was just a little door. And it looked amazing when I looked in and saw it. But that's when we walked around 3 times and just came out of it going, yeah, that was a lot of good things happened there.
What do you feel like if you look at it all and all that you've done, that you've learned about yourself?
I've just kind of given up and just let it happen. I had those, you have those questions about who is God, and I'm not one of those people who's a philosopher and all these people who can really work it out. It's all feeling, and my explanation is I look at us being here on Earth and looking up at the heavens, and through the knowledge of scientists we know that the heavens is not just the sun and the moon. You look up there and all the stars, and most of those stars are other galaxies. So, and from what I hear, there's 13 billion light years is our galaxy, and there's hundreds of thousands more galaxies. So that's kind of mind-boggling. I still can never fathom it, but I know it's there, and I'm here, really down there, and all this is out there. And then I look at the other way, and I look at, see again, scientists saying we've got cells, and I've actually got photos of cells, but there's something like 13.5 trillion or 3 trillion cells in our body, all doing their various little things. And they're all individual. And so this is just beyond my capabilities of trying to understand. Even if I believe scientists, but just as a fact that somebody designed it. And this is Ishvara, this is God. That's the person who did it. So, and we're part of it. We're part of it, even though we're the smallest little thing. We're part of a whole universe. And so you just believe that, and that's, what else can you do? You just,
yeah. That's beautiful, thank you, Darby. So if there's one thing that you've learned that you'd like to share with others, what would that be?
A couple of things maybe. One is surrender, which is basically what it is. And I was talking to a friend of mine last week, and he was saying, you know, you can be lucky in this life and find the thing that you really like to do, and it can be help humanity what it is. But you know, being a yoga teacher, it's something I really enjoy. I love doing it, and you know, it's kind of a blessing that I've got it. And I just surrender to that fact, and just, you know, I'm continually learning, and I'm just learning, and the information is coming. As I'm not looking in books to get it. It's just I'm looking, and it seems the information comes, which is amazing. So it's just surrender. And he was just saying, well, what you do get is be good at what you're doing, and then polish it, enjoy it, and polish it. And again, that's just surrender, and that's life.
Thank you so much, Darby.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.